I am mad.
You're mad at her.
I'm never mad at her.
She's afraid.
Today's White House briefing on coronavirus was the longest one yet.
Class, it's now recording. Thank you all for joining us on this lovely evening. Some of us have been home all day. Some of us have been working and like Sam on the front lines. Again, thank you, Sam, for everything you are doing for us and for the world and for all your patience. So we're going to be learning today really the basics of the Seder, how to lead a Seder, how to make the Seder enjoyable. And it's going to be very different this year. Mainly, and by the way, everyone's muted, but you could very easily unmute yourself by simply pressing, I think, on the bottom left of everyone's screen. You can see an unmute button. You could either press that, or you could actually simply raise your hand. There's a virtual option at the bottom to raise your hand, or you could just chat a question, or just physically raise your hand, and hopefully I'll see you, and you'll be able to ask away. So we're going to be learning the Seder basics, how to run a Seder, what to do at the Seder, what to say at the Seder. Hopefully we'll cover this in an hour. Of course, any questions throughout, you're welcome to ask. But it's important to realize that even though this year is going to be different, Pesach is always the same, which means we have matzah that we have to eat. We have a date that we have to eat it on. And it's actually an amazing thing that if you would ask the people discovering America, if you want to even ask the greatest historian, what were they eating when they, on the boat, what did they bring, what food did they bring with them? It would be very tough for them to answer. But yet as Jews, we actually know the exact food the Jews ate as we celebrated our Exodus. We knew exactly what time of day it happened, which means even though I think we know the date of when Christopher Columbus arrived, if I'm not mistaken, it was October 12th. I'm actually the newest American citizen from amongst this group, so I probably know the answer to that question the best. We celebrate it as Columbus Day, the second Monday in October, but I don't think we know what time of day it happened. Yet as Jews, we know it's documented in the Torah, the exact moment of the Exodus, exactly how we were to celebrate, and we've been doing it since for 3,332 years, which means this year marks almost 3,500 years since the Exodus. And as Jews, we actually celebrate it, not only commemorating it, but we actually are supposed to reenact it. We're supposed to consider it, we're supposed to treat it as if we ourselves are leaving Egypt. We have to find in Egypt within us a struggle that we deal with and free ourselves from it. That's actually one of the main concepts, the main purpose of the Seder. In fact, in the words of the Haggadah, the words of the book that we read that this evening on the Seder night, it actually says our obligation is to see ourselves as if we ourselves are leaving Egypt. So, and that means leaving our personal limitations and boundaries and allowing ourselves to become freed and liberated. So let's start with the basics. Why should we be making a Seder this year? So there was, as a joke, just to start off the class, there was once a king who had a Jewish advisor. The advisor's name was Jaime, a Jewish guy. And the king relied on Jaime's wise advice for many counsels. Once the king decided to promote Jaime, but said, if you want to be promoted, he ordered Jaime, he has to convert to Christianity. And Jaime obeyed. He said, sure, more pay, bigger job, I'm in. But then he felt great remorse. He could take it no longer, the decision he made, and he runs back to the palace. And he tells the king that I'm sorry, but I can't leave my faith. I'm a Jew, I was born a Jew, and I will die a Jew. Do what you want to me, but I will always remain Jewish. The king says, Jaime, I had no idea that your Jewish faith was so important to you. Of course, I respect it. If that's how you feel, you could be a Jew again. You're too important for me to lose. I'll take you the way you are. I'm very happy to have you as a Jew. And when Jaime arrived home, he tells his wife, Sarah, I want you to know, we can be Jews again. The king allows us to be Jews. So Sarah's wife says, Jaime, you couldn't at least wait till after Passover? You're the one that's going to be cleaning this year. So the Seder for many of us is a highlight of the year. Many of our fondest memories is actually at the Seder table. I know for me it definitely is. Tonight is actually the yahrzeit, the anniversary of passing of my grandfather, Mordechai ben Ephraim, who would visit us from Paris, from France, every year to Montreal for the Seder. And he would stay actually for 7 weeks, from Passover, from Pesach. He would stay all the way till Shavuot. And some of my fondest memories as a child was sitting next to my grandfather at the Seder. So this year, certainly, the Seder experience will be different than any other year. So it's not only why is this night different, it's going to be why is this year different. But nonetheless, the Jewish commitment to celebrating the Seder is very strong. Even in the most difficult of circumstances, we've always found a day to mark this occasion. Just to give you one example, it's a heavy example, but it was in a concentration camp, the Vahinigen concentration camp in 1943. And there was a resident, a prisoner of this camp. His name was Moshe Pearl, of blessed memory. And the people in the camp were miserable. Of course, they were in this concentration camp, seeing so many of their families being taken to the gas chambers and being killed. They saw death before their eyes. But they said, Pesach is coming, and we need to have flour so we can make matzah for the Seder. So Moshe Pearl says that shortly before Passover, around a week or some days before, one of the SS guards entered my workshop, and his job, he used to paint signs. He was a painter. And he asked me, he said, I'm commanding you, you have to make dummy targets for us to practice our target, our aim. So just then, Moshe Pearl had an idea. And he said that in order for me to make these targets, to paint these targets, I need flour. Flour will be what I need in order to paint. And the guard said, okay, how much do you need? And he says, Moshe Pearl said, I need 5 kilograms of flour. So the guard agreed, and he gave his referral for Moshe Pearl to get flour. So now Moshe Pearl came back to his barracks with his flour. Even though they knew that they would be killed if they were found making this matzah, they got to work. They secretly made matzah. They baked the matzah in the oven in Pearl's workroom where he would make his paint. They would seal the door and the windows for the few days before Pesach to work on making this matzah. When the night of the Seder came, 20 Jewish men, 20 Jewish people managed to pull off a Seder. They ate potatoes that they had, and they had their little matzah, and instead of real wine, they had water mixed with some sugar that they were able to smuggle. And they managed, someone there knew the Haggadah by heart. So when the Nazis succeeded in trying to destroy so many Jewish lives, they failed to destroy the Jewish life of these Jews celebrating a Seder on the holiday of Pesach. So we see even in the most difficult of times, the holiday of Pesach was observed. So even though now you can't compare it to what they had back then, of course not, but similar is still, for at least the 21st century, it's difficult, we're isolated, where we're not going to be with our families the way we would want necessarily. And with so many guests at our Seder, we usually have around 120, 125 people. My mother would come from Montreal. Now she's going to be alone in Montreal. My father is in Vancouver. But at the same time, we have to realize that we have to do it, and we have to do it with joy. If you go back to the very first Seder, and I don't know, I think I shared this on a Facebook Live. I'm kind of all over the place in my sharing and messages. So, but it's important to make note. It's actually an amazing thing that already from the first Seder, the Jewish people were commanded to remain isolated in their homes. There was a plague going on outside in Egypt. It was called the plague, the death of the firstborn. The Jews were commanded to remain home to be protected. And they even had to make a sign of blood on their doorposts in order that the angel passes over them. That's where the name Passover comes from. But the point is, at our first celebration of the Seder, we weren't 100 people around the table. We were just our immediate family. That's who we were able to be with and no one else. And that's how we were able to be protected. So already from the first moment of our Jewish history, there was already a very impactful lesson, a message that it resonates so strongly. In many religions, the communal get-togethers and gatherings kind of lose the ability of the individual and special focus to be emphasized. The uniqueness of each individual, the uniqueness of our individuality, it could sometimes in other religions could get passed over, could get excluded. And yet over here, the first message that is being shared as a nation is our individual powers are incredibly important. And therefore, we didn't rely on Moses leading our Seder or on Aaron or on the elders. Each family were committed and each family were instructed to lead their own Seder. And it's just a reminder that it allows our individual efforts to be expressed and to do a Seder in our style, with our preparation to it, and with our important messages that we want to share and impart to whoever will be with you for the Seder. It definitely has a particular resonance to realize that it goes back all the way to the original, all the way to the source of all the Seders. This year, God wants something else from us, and let's live up to that challenge. And here's another interesting part. Many of us are considering, many Jewish people that I've been speaking with are considering to do a Seder over Zoom, similar to how we're doing this class over Zoom. It definitely I definitely understand it emotionally, but halachically, according to Jewish law, there's a lot of limitations with electricity on holidays, etc. So, and actually being with everyone else, you're going to be more focused on the screen than being focused on the Seder. While obviously you want to do it all together, but you're right away focused on what's on the screen rather than focused on what's on your plate and those immediately around you. So what I do suggest, the way we would like to do it, is before the Seder starts, or we could do a pre-Seder, a pre-game, I guess we would call it in football language, where you Zoom your friends and you Zoom your family and you sing some songs. But then at nightfall, when you light the candles, you should really be present and focused on the celebration itself, and maybe that should be our mission for the year. So let's consider, why do we even make a Seder? The Seder is an incredibly important time because of the energy that's in the air, specifically on that night, on the 15th of Nisan, which marks the holiday of Passover, the day we left Egypt. There's an incredible energy of freedom that is involved in the air. So nowadays, many of us are very familiar with the word symptoms. It's on everyone's lips. We're all concerned if we hear someone having the symptoms or someone's temperature showing the symptoms of the virus. But in truth, we're not really worried about the symptoms a person may be displaying. If you go to the hospital, they check for the symptoms, but then they're not treating the symptoms, they're treating the virus. Because the symptoms is just the virus causes the symptoms, so you need to get to the source, which is the virus itself. The virus itself is unobservable, and therefore you have to look at it through the symptoms. But the real concerns is that the virus, God forbid, could be there. So in a positive sense also, the basic principle in Kabbalah, in the mystical parts of Judaism, is that everything that happens in this world is actually only a symptom of what's actually happening in the spiritual world and the heavenly worlds above. Which means whatever we're experiencing here is actually a symptom, it's an outcome, it's something we can feel of what's going on a higher realm. And the same is true about miracles in general. When a miracle, such as the miracle of the Exodus of Egypt, which we're celebrating on Passover, when it occurs, the reason why that miracle occurred at that time on this date is because there's a supernatural divine energy that is pertinent, that is dominant on this date. So the physical exodus of the Jews from Egypt some 3,000 years ago was a symptom of the spiritual energy that allowed liberation, allowed freedom, that was present on that fateful night, the 15th of Nisan, 3,332 years ago. So what I'm trying to get to is that the night of Pesach has an energy of freedom and the miracles of liberation and that spark of energy that is involved in the air. And that was present thousands of years ago, and that's how the miracle of our Exodus happened. but that's present actually every year. And our job is actually to try to tap in to that spiritual energy of freedom and allow it to be relevant in our lives. And in truth, here's another very important point. In Judaism, we believe that every holiday, it actually, the way it works is almost like a spiraling staircase. A spiraling staircase, you keep on climbing higher, and yet going back to the same area where you were 360 before, just on a higher level. The way every holiday, you're on the same date as it was last year, but this year is actually on a higher level. That is true with Hanukkah and Rosh Hashanah. There's a spiritual energy of the air, of whatever holiday it is. And with Pesach, there's a spiritual energy of the air of freedom, but the freedom that we can experience this year should be even felt at a deeper level spiritually than it was before. So what we should be asking, and you could take a note on this and try to mention this to your family or to yourself at the Seder, this is an essential part of the Seder that is skipped over too many times. The main point over here is an inner liberation that we're trying to experience, which means you should be asking yourself, in what area of I know what I know what I have to work on, and only you know what you have to work on. So the question you have to be asking on this night, next Wednesday night and Thursday night, is which area of my life do I lack freedom? What are the habits that I need to work on to ameliorate them, to perfect them? What are the flaws that I recognize that need to be worked on for me to be a better person? What am I feeling attached to that I shouldn't be? Who or what am I enslaved to? What is not allowing me to actualize the potential and my God-given talents that I was given? So we have to understand that the Seder night, we have that ability to truly go free. We have to work on it. It's a work in progress. But the Seder night, there's a miraculous energy of air of freedom, liberation that is present that we have to tap into. So when we ask these questions on this night, and as we'll soon see, the recipe to answer these questions is the Haggadah with the Seder items, the matzah especially. When we internalize these properly, we're actually giving ourselves the recipe to experience this freedom. So we're granted divine assistance, and literally that assistance, that divine energy is in the air. Okay. So far, any questions? All right, Amy. Yes, let me hear.
So like, obviously I wasn't expecting to do like the Seder like this. I was expecting it to be a big Seder, like, you know, it always is every year until all this happened. But if we don't have like, say, all the stuff like cup of Elijah or like a Seder plate or like a matzah, like I tried to look on Amazon, but it's like 3 weeks out from shipping.
I saw that. Everything you're trying to get, it's a crisis, huh?
I was just wondering, like, do you just suggest like kind of using whatever you have to like make your own, I guess?
Yeah, and there's actually something that's such a great question. I'm wondering, I don't know if Sam has any of his family items from the Seder. I know he has like his mom's menorah. I'm wondering if you have a cup of Elijah, Sam. Do you have anything from your family?
I have a set of Haggadah.
Oh, is that mine that got cut off a little bit, or Sam's? Amy, do you still hear me? Hold on, never mind.